Thank you so much for showing up today for this interview.
Thank you.
And I'm pursuing my master's in management with data analytics at the Keele University, UK. And at the stage where I've reached, I'm doing my dissertation and a problem I've identified for Safaricom that's affecting our business here today. Before I start giving you the context of this interview, I'd want you to introduce yourself to my audience, just for reference purposes, please.
All right, fantastic. Look, I think, Alfonso, foremost, thank you so much for the interview. I do appreciate. And the second part is congratulations and all the best for your master. So my name is Ishmael. I'm the head of network operations, right, including by extension the Network Operations Center. So in essence, we are responsible for the end-to-end operations of the network for Safaricom Ethiopia. And what does it mean? What it means is we're responsible for the quality of the network and the service that we provide to our customer. So in any event that we have any deficiencies or any quality-related issues or any hardware or software defect, my team is responsible for making sure that we respond in time and we resolve these particular issues. And by extension, as I've mentioned, responsible for the NOC. The NOC, in essence, is a 24-hour institution where we have teams that are working 24 hours. And their responsibility is to monitor the network. Right? So they work in conjunction with the maintenance support teams. They're able to monitor literally end-to-end the network availability. They're able to monitor the quality components, like I've said earlier on regarding the network, any form of degradation, and they will then escalate any issues to the operations maintenance teams who are able to implement the necessary corrective measures. So that's really it in brief in terms of my responsibility for Safaricom Ethiopia.
Thank you so much, Ishmael. The same way I've just briefed you in my journey to masters. I've covered quite a number of modules that entails management.
Yeah.
And whatever I do in big data, actually the program of my masters has given me an opportunity to give something for Safaricom.
Yeah.
One of the pain points that we've identified is affecting our customer acquisition and retention. And that, of course, has got a bigger impact in terms of the revenues we generate for the company. The expenses we put in and the return we get impact.
Yes.
So my problem that I've identified, I want to solve for Safaricom, where I stick within big data, is retaining our customers that we have just acquired. We are so new and we are still in baby steps, but right now picking bit by bit. And the network expansion of what we've started from deploying in Addis Ababa across the whole of Ethiopia is coming at a cost where not all the population is covered in. And it's a concern that we are working so hard to acquire but cannot retain. And I had a similar discussion of interview like this with our commercial business partners within Safaricom. And one of the problems or pain points or triggers they identified for me is network coverage within Ethiopia.
Yeah.
So their argument is that customers, yes, we are deploying a network, yes, but not fully in the whole geographical scope of Ethiopia. So we find areas where we've fully covered well and the network is performing well. But when customers travel to areas which are not covered, they find difficulties in calling their friends and families. This is triggering these customers to either get frustrated and say, I don't want to use Safaricom anymore because it's not working here. So the bit they have done on their end, just to be able to make customers understand, is to provide some information to the customers where network is fully covered.
Yes.
They have done CVM campaigns where they are able to send messages to customers telling them this area is covered, this area is not covered. They've also put this information is also available on the website to the public domain, and they are also pursuing this through the regional sales managers and distributors, just to where they are doing SIM cell activations in the market, just to indicate the customers where our network are covered. So what do you have to say about this?
Look, I think foremost is I need to commend you for identifying this particular gap or a limitation, if you like, right, or a challenge in essence, right, which we encounter in this business. I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, the revenue margins are not really coming through at a preferred rate, although we're expanding the network quite aggressively. And maybe just to share some insights, right? So you've got two key matrices that actually measures the customer acquisition. Right? You've got gross adds, so in other words, a SIM sold, you sell a SIM to a customer, and you then have the active components. The active component is keeping the customer into the network. And I think to your point, right, Alfonso, is in the early stages when we rolled out the network, in actual fact, instantly after the launch, on the 6th of October 2021, right, is that the proportion of the active and the gross was almost very, very close. It was in the order of about 80%. We're seeing that dropping over time, right? We're sitting roughly around, I think, 1/3 of the total base. And precisely because of the reason you outlined, right, among others, okay, is we are acquiring the customer, then how do we retain that customer? So to be more pointed in my response to coverage specifically, let me start foremost with the regulatory framework. So what we have today with any of our partners, and Ethiotel in particular, who's providing a similar solution with us, is an infrastructure sharing agreement. So in other words, we share the tower and we share the power in order to expedite our rollout. Right? The other component is us rolling out our own sites. And we're sitting at almost a 50-50 split of the 2,300 sites which are live today. Okay. Now, the infra sharing is not equivalent to roaming. Meaning, if we are roaming on Ethiotel, we can argue having more or less a similar coverage in terms of service provision to the customers in Ethiotel. We don't have that. We opted to build our own network. So what it means is that for a greenfield like ours, we therefore can't be expected at least 2 years after the year and a half in essence, after the launch, to anyhow be sitting at a similar coverage as Ethiotel. Okay? We're seeing roughly around 35% of our coverage as in today. So what it means is that you have a 65% of a population coverage which is in the plan, so we're not covering those areas as yet. Right? It's still very much in the pipeline. And among others, with the imminent Mekele, where we're doing the launch in about a month or so. So what it means is that if a customer were to buy a SIM card in Addis and they go to Mekele, they won't have coverage. That's the first part. The second one is that if they go to certain parts, especially in the more rural areas, right? Because when you're building a network, you start in the city center and you then move to the suburban and ultimately to the rural areas. And we've adopted that strategy. Hence, we have actually exhausted all our urban areas. We've exhausted a larger portion of suburban. We're now moving into rural and later we then move into rural areas. So that's the customers who are into the non-covered areas will have a coverage issue. But in addition to that, you also have instances where we have deployed the network in other ways. We have put sites, but we're not fully covering the clusters. Right? And the proportion of coverage will vary from one to the other. I mean, areas like Bonga, for instance, when you look into the customer complaints that are coming through customer care, we know we have an issue. We have an issue in Asosa. Kempton are some of the areas that are coming predominantly. So you have coverage, but it's what we call partial coverage. Right? Do we have plans into place? Without any slightest doubt. We are aggressively rolling out our network, and mainly to make sure that we can then close on areas which are in service, but also in areas where we've got partial coverage. And some of the areas, of course, being the ones we have just outlined right now.
You've mentioned a very good point of you are gearing up to Mekele. It's a region that has been in the past have issues with insecurity. And how do you see the momentum right now with the stability of the security in that region?
So good point. So Mekele is relatively stable, post the Pretoria resolution. Right. After a couple of months, that's when we then begin to put plans to expand our coverage into Mekele. It's a very critical area. It was actually in the first phase of our business case, and of course, with all the security challenges, we could not move into Mekele. As it is now, we're starting into Mekele City and the immediate, we're moving beyond that. We have just over 120 sites in total that we're building as part of phase 1, and now we'll move into phase 2 and other immediate cities. And the security is okay, right, in Mekele. I need to mention though that now that you're talking about security and its impact into our rollout, I think it's quite huge in certain sections. As I'm speaking currently in the more northern side, which is the Amara area, right, we've been on, call it a crisis, or data has been locked now due to the current security challenges from the 4th of August. So that's close to 6 months now. What it means is that even if you have a device, unfortunately you cannot do any PS or data related services because the network layer has been locked. It does pose a challenge insofar as our commitment and our drive to make sure that we provide services to our customers. So there are certain areas, but in Mekele specifically, things have been safer. Hence, progress in terms of rollout has been very good, and we're looking for the imminent launch.
Okay, you see, these are like the one you just mentioned in the Amhara region where the data services have been locked. This is something that is out of your control, out of Safaricom's control. These are normal challenges that can happen. We can call them catastrophic, that can befall in any business.
Yes.
Now, we did plan for this. Safaricom did not plan for these challenges, but maybe they prepared themselves for these challenges.
Correct.
Now, that based on the history of the security, when we were coming into Ethiopia, the security situation was not good at all. It has stabilized. And apart from these challenges that we are facing, are there any strategies you are putting into place, okay, to just accelerate your original plan?
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty much sure, let me just first by starting, are you on track with the original plan of the network coverage?
Yeah.
Is it true? It is true. So what are some strategies you are putting or implementing to gear up the deployment of network in the, I'll be specific, you mentioned less densely populated areas,
yes,
like the rural areas.
Yeah.
What strategies are you putting in place to cover?
Yeah, so it's two things, and I think I'll go to the basic fundamentals of network expansion. Right? The first one is we have the intelligence and data insights to inform which areas will have a priority over what. So the data is there in our disposal. Right? We have a plan now already locked, at least for the coming year, in terms of what we need to go and deploy. When you deploy a network, right, there's two fundamental things, right? The first one is initial factory. Number one, you need to have equipment. So you do like front loading and you order your equipment timelessly, which is part of the basic fundamentals of program management. Right? So we're doing that, working very closely and being driven largely by logistics and working with other external parties. That's number one. Right. The second one, because particularly for the more offshore equipment, etc., where the lead times are longer. So effective program management and also buying in time and also in bulk. The second aspect is what we call acquiring sites. Right. So acquiring sites will include, among others, what we call site hunting. So it's where the engineers will go out there in different areas. They will start to acquire sites through negotiating with the landlords. In other words, the owner of the land which we want to lease for a certain period. And the more you have in the pool, it prepares you now for this unexpected eventualities, i.e. a security issue, right? Because you've got enough into the pool. So we have strategies into place to make sure that we have sufficient sites into the pool. So in other words, if you are planning to build, say, 300 sites in Q1, okay, your site acquisition buffer has to be higher than that. So that in any event that you have any distraction in any area, you're able to quickly move to the other area. I mean, for instance, when we had the situation in the north, we're able to quickly move to Mkele, we're able to move to certain parts in the south, largely because of the strategy. The second one is that, third one rather, the very critical one is around power availability, the grid. Okay? So EEU, the power utility partner, are a very critical stakeholder to us, right? Because they provide power. So what we do is that we have strategies into place, we've got a program into place, which we monitor very closely to make sure that we can unlock grid availability for connection of our sites in time. And those three attributes are a result, or as a result, why we are where we are right now, but we are able to quickly respond in any event that we have any of the security challenges. So we have a strategy into place and execution is looking good.
Okay. Out of the percentage of or the infrastructural investment we have put so far on the network, whether it is in an urban area or a rural area, do you foresee or have you encountered any technological challenge in doing these deployments? And does this technological challenge has an impact on your pace of doing the rollout?
Yeah. Look, it's less technology challenge, but more of a infrastructure challenge. An infrastructure challenge means is the availability of particularly grid for us to be able to connect our sites. Yes, granted, we are exploring and we have been deploying, by the way, other alternative power sources like generator deployment. We have also deployed a few solar sites, especially in areas where we don't have a grid. But equally with that, there's also a cost element that we have to take into account. I mean, the solar solutions have got a very high demand on your capex, right? And while the generators, on the other hand, especially when they are running 24 hours in the absence of the grid, you burn fuel, right? And that has a direct impact in terms of our cost. In actual fact, our strategy is to make sure that we can reduce the number of generators into the network for green energy purposes and objective, but also to reduce the cost to operate and to keep the site up. So we're exploring that, but the main issue in any event has been the infrastructure challenge around the grid. And the other one I've mentioned is around security, of course, that we do have areas where we want to deploy the network, and largely because of security challenges, we cannot. But from a technology perspective, there isn't any constraint at this point in time, any fundamental ones for that matter.
Okay. Now, because we are operating under a license from the government,
yes,
are there any regulatory considerations that you always put into account when doing the coverage part?
Correct, we do. So we have coverage obligations as set or part of the licenses, right? And they're very per milestones, right? From the point when the license was issued. And the reason why, maybe to give some context on why you need to have the license, is because when you acquire and you allocated a license, the objective is to make sure that you provide the coverage which you committed to. And that it's important for you as part of the pre-assessment, right, to make sure that you can do an in-depth analysis into appreciating the construct, the challenges that we have into the ground to make sure that we can adhere to that. Of which failure to, there can be other repercussions. Of course, in instances where there are other justification reasons on the reason why you are having a difficulty, those will then be outlined on the table. But in essence, yes, one of the key obligations from government was the population coverage obligation, which we have presented before government.
Okay. From your own context of the compliance bit you try to put in, the challenges you are trying to also address or you are facing on a day-to-day basis, you are geared plan to also stick within, be on track with your original plan.
Yes.
Overall, what would you say is the performance of the network coverage, and can it give confidence to our customers that are churning
yes.
from our network?
That's a good point, and I'm glad you asked the question. So we have a few predefined KPIs which we use to measure whether our customers are happy with us. Okay. You've got some that are more commercial inclined, brand related, and cost of the data we provide, voice minutes, etc. But within the technology environment, we have what you call an NPS, Network Promoter Score, which effectively is just a survey where we ask customers whether they're happy with our coverage, they're happy with our signal strength, etc. And the positive has consistently been above 2/3 of the sample base, way higher than that, which is good. So it means our customers are happy with us. The second one, we do what we call a benchmark exercise. So this is where we go and test our network relative to the competitor. In other instances, test our network alone. And you've got predefined KPIs, like number one, what is the average data consumption? You're doing streaming. We look at things like dropping the cost, the frequency thereof in a certain area, access to the network, and many others. And I'm very proud to say that in areas where we have deployed the network, in other words, we've got coverage, we are better than the competitor, factually so, proven statistically, right? And we have that in our disposal. The other elements is around what we call network availability. In other words, in a 24-hour span or period, how many times is the network available? Our target today is at 99.5%, and we're sitting consistently around the same target. So what it means is that for the 99.5% of the time, our network is available to our customer. And the customers have responded positively, right, through the other measures like NPS, but equally, as I've highlighted, we're seeing from the benchmark exercise that we carry out. So our performance is very good, especially on data, where one of our key strategies is we're going to be number one data provider across all the cities or areas we've deployed the network. And right now, 100% of all areas we've deployed our network, we are a number one on data.
That's a quite impressive feedback and results we are seeing from the market. And lastly, before we conclude this session, what do you think could have been done on the initial stages, just to maybe address some of these challenges that you mentioned to me? What could you have done better?
Yeah. So that's a very good question. I think number one is it is all recorded that we had the very fastest launch, usually the fastest test call. If I look into the formation of the team, which started roughly around in the second quarter of 2021, and having the first call literally on the first quarter of the next calendar year, was absolutely unheard of, right? And again, launching in IBC on the 6th of October 2021 within such a short period of time. And today, by the way, sitting at 2,300, one of the most fastest rollout. I think there has to be an appreciation to around 2,300 sites that are live. In other words, we're providing services to the customers.
Within a year?
Actually, as of to now. Okay. As of today.
Okay.
That's where we're sitting at. And what does it mean? What this means is the team has done a fantastic job, and I think we have to commend them. Right? In terms of the challenges that we have in our disposal, I think there is two in particular which I've highlighted. The first one I refer to security. Right? Security is an external disruptor. Right? we have had engagements with the relevant authorities. But when you have a situation like in the north, we actually call it force majeure. There's very little that we can do. And we're doing everything that we can under the cloud to maintain the network services. Complex it might be around accessibility to the sites to make sure that we keep the network up, but and there's been engagements. So we'll continue doing that. We do acknowledge that as a challenge. The second aspect, I think, much as I've spoken about the grid, we don't really think it's a very major issue given the other alternatives. But in our view is that perhaps with a far more refined long-term plan, to allow for unlocking as many areas as possible, so that when the sites are coming through, you don't have a situation where, i.e., you're sort of waiting for the grid and the grid is available. And I think I need to mention that I'm not talking about a bigger proportion. It's a relatively small proportion, but it's something definitely for consideration, which we're working very closely with the electricity utility or power service provider, to make sure that our plan are more long term, and we're able to unlock the rollout as we're progressing.
This challenge that you've as now at your disposal and at your best knowledge as of now. Do you think there are things we could have done before even starting the launch?
Yeah, I think it comes back to stakeholder partnership, right? Because I so happens to be part of the wholesale team that did all the negotiation, and this is now post the license launch, and there has been engagements, by the way, prior with some of the stakeholders, but maybe to be more specific to your question is that maybe more targeted engagements with some of the third parties, more targeted collaboration with other independent institutions like ECA to support us, could have provided an element of an aid into ensuring that our challenges are not to the scale that we have as of today.
I think that covers, I really appreciate your time. This covers the end of the information I wanted to get from a point of our network coverage. And I'm pretty much sure, and hopefully, it's my wish that the problem I'm going to solve is going to get across the network coverage, just to make sure that we have got a very good NPS, the KPIs that we've set. We retain as much customers as possible, and the program I'm doing, I'm pretty much sure will give the solution to Safaricom.
Look, I think in my closing remarks, as I've said, Alfonso, I have no doubt that you have all the drive and the commitment and capability to really help us to resolve this. It is a big issue, like I've mentioned, that the gap between the active and the gross is quite huge. And to your earlier point, change is one of the major issues. And as we accelerate in our rollout, aggressively so, and unlocking or closing coverage in areas where we don't have coverage, you also need creative ways, right? To make sure that we can convert, particularly those that are in areas where we've got coverage as of today, or at least partial coverage. If you don't have a coverage, it's a different story, but if you have some sort of coverage, it might be as an opportunity. And I think on that note, I can only wish you well, and we are here to support you with any insights, because the program that you're busy with is important for Safaricom. So all the best, well done, and I wish you well.
Thank you so much, Ishmael.
Thank you.